Hey, what's up? Today we're doing a standing intro. Using hyperbole, like, the greatest or the best or the most epic, is a really common strategy that content creators use to get you to click on videos. The problem with overusing hyperbole is that the words start to lose meaning. So when I say this is the best or the greatest, the chances of that being actually true are near zero. So instead of me promising you that you're gonna get the greatest brownie recipe of all time in this video, let me tell you very clearly what you are gonna get. The earnest, full creative effort of somebody who has spent their entire adult lives thinking about food, working in restaurants, and then the last 5 to 7 years developing recipes every single day. I spent 6 weeks on this recipe. I made over 100 pans of brownies. I did tens of hours of research, and this is the best that I could come up with. Is it the greatest brownie recipe of all time? Who knows? All I can say is that it's probably the best that I've ever had. Today I'm going to show you how to make it. To get started, I'll combine 100 grams of all-purpose flour with 1 gram of baking powder, or use a 1/4 teaspoon for this because scales are usually not that sensitive around 1 gram. And then I'll add in 4 grams of salt. Next, I'll just whisk those together real quick, and that's our dry ingredients. By the way, when you see me with all of my ingredients perfectly measured out into small cups, just know that you don't have to do that. I do it so that I can more clearly illustrate the process of combining things on camera, but when I'm baking off camera, I put a bowl on a scale, add each ingredient one at a time, tear it out, then add in the next. Once my dry is combined, I'll grab a little baby saucepan, drop it on the stove, then I'll preheat my oven to 325F. Into the saucepan, I'll add 30 grams of olive oil, 1 stick or 115 grams of unsalted butter, 150 grams of white sugar, and 50 grams of brown sugar. But Bri, do I really need 2 kinds of fat and 2 kinds of sugar? Well, in my testing, a butter-only brownie was flavorful, but a little bit dry, especially after the brownie's fully cooled. This happens with cake too, because fully saturated fat firms at room temperature, making the baked good perceivably drier. Adding in some oil significantly softened the crumb, as did adding in some brown sugar. Now I'll turn the heat down to low and stir the fats and sugars together until the butter is fully melted and the sugar is mixed in. Also, the sugar won't melt here. There isn't enough moisture. Once combined, things will look a little bit sandy still, and that's fine. Next, I'll add in 100 grams of milk chocolate chips. What the hell? Dark chocolate for life, bro, right? Well, that's what I thought too, and I made about 50 pans of brownies with dark chocolate before my good friend and pastry chef Sarah offered the idea of milk chocolate to round things out, and it worked. The milk chocolate boosted the sweetness the perfect amount, it lowered the bitterness, and it made my brownie more rich and luxurious because milk chocolate has a higher fat content than dark. Once everything's stirred together, I'm gonna move this melt into a medium bowl. The temperature here should still be warm, but not hot. So if yours is still a little bit feisty, give it 3 to 5 minutes to chill the fuck out. Next, I'll add in 50 grams of Dutch processed cocoa. The Dutch process makes the cocoa's natural acidity more neutral, which makes the powder darker and results in a milder, softer chocolate vibe that's less bitter. Dutch cocoa is what gives Oreos their color and flavor. And when I switched from reg to Dutch, the chocolate flavor got a lot more intense and more balanced. If you don't have it, sub in 65 grams of red cocoa. You need more because regular cocoa is less absorbent than Dutch. Okay, I'll just whisk that into the melted chocolate fat combination until there's no longer any lumps. Then I'll add in 5 grams of vanilla extract and 2 large eggs. I'll jump back in with a whisk now and break up the eggs as best I can before I start stirring them in. Some recipes will specify that you should beat the eggs before you add them in, and that's not necessary. Since there's no gluten in the bowl yet, we can stir this as much as we want. Also, I want to address a really common strategy for brownie mixing that I chose not to use: beating the eggs in sugar. This theoretically dissolves the sugar more fully into the egg white, which according to food science leads to more brownie skin, which is essentially a meringue that develops on top of the brownie. I tested this process many times alongside the hand mix version, and the results, as far as I could tell, were basically the same. So for my specific formulation at least, the egg beating is totally not necessary. You can get epic brownie skin without it, and I'm gonna show you how. Now, to enhance brownie skin formation, what I am gonna do is, once the eggs are mixed in, I'm gonna let the batter sit for 10 minutes to let the sugar fully dissolve naturally, and to thank Hungry Root for sponsoring this video. In this house, meal planning and grocery shopping are my responsibility. Unfortunately, I routinely fall short on that duty, and we either have to order out because we don't have any groceries, or we gotta eat scrambled eggs for dinner. Again. I'm getting a divorce. So to help out, I've tried a variety of meal and grocery delivery services, and Hungry Root is my favorite by far. I really like it because it's nailed my grocery and dietary preferences. The groceries are super fresh and healthy, and the meal ideas that they provide along with the groceries are easy to put together and taste really good. When you sign up, you can get really granular on your preferences too. I told them that we wanted gluten-free, high-protein, high-fiber meal options, plus a mix of quick recipes and more chefy dishes. We also picked our favorite proteins, snack types, and favorite cuisines. I've also cooked a bunch of stuff that I wouldn't have otherwise. Ooh, like these sweet potato black bean tacos. These are delicious, and we actually ordered them a second time. So if you want to make feeding yourself easier, for a limited time, you can get 40% off your first Hungry Root box, plus a free item in every box for life. Click the link in my description below or go to hungryroot.com and use code Brian. 10 minutes later, I've got a silky smooth batter that already looks beautiful. To drive home the point on the dissolved sugar, I'm just gonna whisk this one more time for about 30 to 60 seconds, because this will hopefully dissolve any last little grains of brown sugar that are still holding out. Next, I'll grab that bowl of dry mix and add that on top of the wet, then jump in and stir to combine with a spatula. Now that there's gluten in the bowl, we wanna be conscious of the total stir amount. If you overstir, you can eventually start to get a little bit of toughness in the chew. Okay, once combined, I'm gonna add an 85 to 100 grams of dark chocolate chips. To prep these, I like to chop them down by about half. And I go through the trouble of doing this because giant pockets of chocolate will turn this into a chocolate chip brownie and kind of steal the show texturally. That's not what I want. After chopping, there's gonna be a lot of dusty chocolate in the mix that's gonna muddy up the contrast between the chewy brownie and the melted chocolate, so I like to sift those out. If this is all a step too far for you, I totally get it, but this is my greatest of all time brownie, so I really went the extra mile to dial in every little detail. Also, I'm using two types of chocolate chips here to get a wide spectrum of chocolate flavor. The milk chocolate brings a subtle, rich sweetness, and the 60 to 70% dark chocolate brings a mature intensity that you don't get from the milk. Once the chocolate chips are stirred in, I'm gonna flip this brownie batter into a well-greased metal 8x8 brownie pan. If you're wondering about a glass pan, those can work, but they don't transfer heat to the batter as well as metal does. So you end up with this steamed, soft brownie exterior that texturally isn't great. This is the same reason that I don't use a parchment sling to help lift the brownie out of the pan after it's baked. The parchment stands between the batter and the hot metal pan, which leads to a soft, steamy outer edge with very little textural interest. Metal is just better because it kind of fries the brownie like a pan pizza and brings some subtle crispiness to the outer edges. Once the batter's flipped into the metal pan, I'm gonna pretty aggressively pound it on the counter to spread everything flat. Resist the urge to spread this out with the back of a rubber spatula. For reasons I don't quite understand, using a utensil to spread this out messes up the brownie skin. If there's any chemistry people out there, please tell me why that is. All I know is that anecdotally, pounding it works way better. Once I've got this thing flattened, I'm gonna load it into my preheated 325F oven and bake it for 35 minutes. You'll notice that I chose to remove the pizza steel that I always keep in my oven because I found in my testing that the pizza steel transferred way too much heat into the bottom of the pan, and that created a thick crust on the bottom that was pretty chewy. And after about 30 to 35 minutes, it's time to pull these things out. Epic brownie skin, dude. Oh man, it just looks perfect. It looks shiny from edge to edge. It rose a good amount, but not so much that it's gonna collapse. Oh my gosh. There's two easy ways to determine if this brownie is done. The first is to stick an instant read into the middle and look for a temperature between 202 and 205. And the second is to stick a cake tester into the middle and see if any brownie gunk gets stuck to it. And that looks pretty good. After cooling, you can see that this brownie is visually stunning. I mean, I literally don't know how I could top this. It's my dream brownie. Wow. So delicately flaky on top. It's such a pretty looking brownie. Now let's take a bite. Oh my God. That is just, it's beautiful. This brownie is directly in the middle of fudgy and cakey. So texturally it hits on everything that you want. It's a little bit spongy at times and it's a little bit dense and firm at other times. It's perfectly chewy, it's extremely chocolatey, and it's perfectly sweet. Honestly, this thing is just special. I really mean it. I really hope you guys try this brownie. I worked really hard on it and I think it's excellent. If you want to see the entire 6-week 100 batch process of developing this recipe, then I'll link that video on your screen right here. I'll see you there.